storytelling. In this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure.
Welcome to this week's episode. This week I am speaking with Karmit, who was my teacher at Emerson College in 2024. It was really wonderful to get to know Karmit a bit better, not just about Storytelling Beyond Words, the course at Emerson College, but also the work that she does in the somatic energetic space. And if you are a storyteller who loves working in that energetic, somatic space, working deeply with the land, working deeply with the body, then you're going to absolutely love this interview. I hope you enjoy this interview with my friend and mentor, Karmit. Welcome to this week's episode. This week we're coming to you from Spain, where we're speaking to Karmit Evanzua, who was my teacher and mentor at Emerson College. But we are talking about her and her work today. So I'd love to hear about where you started with storytelling, Karmit, and what has your journey been?
Hey, hi, Alyssa. Thank you for having me here. My story with storytelling, I guess, started when I was little, although I wasn't ever really aware of it. My imagination was huge. I spent hours and hours and hours in worlds of imagination as a child and telling many, many stories in my head and to my dolls and to my neighbors and to anyone who cared to listen. So, that was my childhood. And in my 20s, as I began figuring out what it is that I want to do in my life, I was very drawn to ecology, to conservation, to that world, environmental work. And I went to study in the States in a school that was interdisciplinary and gave everyone the title of human ecologist. And at a certain point, I realized that science wasn't really for me. Although I could have stayed at the school, leaving the science bit, but it just kind of threw me off, and I left the school and I went to do art. And later on, I discovered the work with earth energies and energies in general. I say discovered because it was like a remembrance, a kind of a coming home and knowing of something that my body knew. And I began to work with landscapes, what people call Western geomancy or dowsing, or working with earth energies. There are many different names to it. But I began to work with that, and I realized that that was the kind of ecology, or that was the kind of work with looking after our earth and our landscapes that I was looking for in earlier years. To make a long story short, this work with landscapes energetically opened up many, many stories that were coming from the landscape. So I would go to places, whether it was homes that I was doing energetic clearing for, or, larger landscapes. And there were stories. There's always stories in the landscape. There's memories of what was there. There's different types of elemental consciousness that I was meeting. And they always, they presented themselves as these characters and these beings. And, I would either see them in my mind's eye or just kind of hear this fragrance of a story. And for a long, long time, I didn't know how to speak about it. It was it was a challenge for me, and it's something I really wanted to do. Like, how do I talk to people about what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing, what I'm perceiving? And then my good friend, Roy Galore, who, as you know, is my colleague in the School of Storytelling at Emerson College, he said, well, of course, through stories you can speak about these things. These things exist. You'll find a whole avenue and a whole way of speaking about it through stories. So that's how I first, as an adult, became more conscious about stories. We started to work together. Our first well, we did lots of different things together before that, actually, but when that thought had come to my mind through his suggestion that stories might be a way of speaking about the invisible world, we created a course called Earth Speakers, and we worked with different kind of practices that we were doing. It was at Emerson College, practices to perceive different elements like certain trees or certain streams, or we would go to different places, do exercises to perceive them, and then allow story fragments to arise, and then people were creating stories from that. And yeah, then a whole body of work developed through that. And then of course came in the traditional stories, which show so many of them do hold a lot of encapsulated knowledge about huge geological processes, or lots of different things that myths, especially, they hold a lot of knowledge, um that kind of knowledge as well. So yeah, this is in short how I came to stories, or
So
how in a way how they reminded me that that they
exist.
exist, and that.
So did you see elementals and things when you were a child? I remember I see faces in trees and branches and leaves and walls and things. Was it something that you've always done, but you didn't have words around what it was?
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. It was something that was very, very present. There were always little people I would speak to, or big people, there would be. Yeah, I was speaking a lot, but as very often happens, I think, to many, many, many children, when there isn't the language in around it, and when the grown-ups around you don't validate
Mm,
what you're seeing, or that it even exists, um, you put it away.
mm,
And so I did put it away. I mean, it was never conscious for me that other people don't see it. I didn't really understand that that other people don't see it. But I think in our family it was described as Karmit's great and wild imagination, and in our world, I mean, this is one of the things that really fascinate me about story work, and the kind of things we do at the school. The in our world, imagination is kind of relegated to a little kind of box of fantasy, something that can happen, but uh, especially artists are full of it, and certain people, but it's not part of our reality.
mm,
So being sort of labeled as Karmit has a great big wild imagination, yeah, just like it was just kind of there in that place. It didn't come into a place where it had any relevance to the world, or any place really in the world. Yeah. So
mm,
it also had quite an isolating um, effect, because the more I realized not everyone else is seeing or thinking in this way, the more I realized, well, okay, I'll just keep it here, and then you this world sort of becomes smaller and smaller and smaller until you put it somewhere
mm,
tucked away in your body, and you only find out about it if you're lucky when you're older, and you sort of look. And when I was older, in my 20s, I had that sense of a seeker who's looking for something, who doesn't know what it is. Just like all the good heroines and heroes of the journeys of the wonder tales, who sort of need to leave their homes to seek something. And sometimes they know what it is they're seeking, sometimes they don't. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just had some clues along the way, and I was adamant that I needed to find that thing. We actually used to call it, I used to call it, because I didn't, my family was not at all a family who knew how to speak about these things, and so even the concept of energy or energy work didn't exist. And so at a certain point in college, I remember that with friends we said, there's this thing, it's it, we called it it.
So I imagine you have some other language around it now. So what do you, in terms of language that you have around it, but also how do you, not everybody sees the world the way you do, or the way that I understand that you do. How do you bridge those worlds between the reality and, not imagination, but the unseen worlds? How do you bridge that for people?
Yeah, so when I probably this was around my early 30s or mid 30s when I began to be really interested in language around this, so when I had already established for myself some more concrete practices around this, and worked much more with it, I became really, really interested in how this translation can happen. And I think that in the beginning, I was very much wanting to speak I can even say almost like a scientific language around it, so being really meticulous about doing these translations and opening up the experience so that everyone can find it. It was really a research, and that these early courses that we did with this was really looking for a language, so that after we had an experience which we all shared in a sort of meditative practice, we asked each and every person to say it how they did. And of course, that's when I realized that everybody has their own metaphorical images that they see, or language, so it became really, really interesting for me to develop this vocabulary. And yeah, on a personal level, I tried to make it as objective and translatable to any person, to every person. And I think gradually over time, I allowed it to be much more pictorial and poetic. And if it lands with you, great. If it doesn't, that's also great. Like not that need for for an objective framework around it kind of fell aside, because it felt like, well, I'm trying to put this world into something that maybe this it's not a perfect fit. They can, of course they can, they live together, of course they do, but it doesn't have to be a one-to-one translation. It can be a feeling. I can actually transmit something with a feeling or a look, which is one of the things, we're talking about storytelling here, and it's one of the beautiful things I think with storytelling. And this brings me a little bit to why we call the course Storytelling Beyond Words, which is the course that you did, because I feel like with a storyteller can transmit so much with their gesture or a gaze or just their being, just being. So together with a pictorial language that comes with a story that you're telling, there is so much that can be shared and told, and not trying to make it I don't know, I keep saying the word objective or scientific, but I think there must be others to try to explain what I'm saying, like that, to make it I don't find the word quite right now.
That's
Do you
okay.
understand what I mean?
Yes, I understand what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about storytelling beyond words. Tell me about your involvement in it, and what's been your experience with it.
Okay. Um, So I think it was 2017. The School of Storytelling has existed for a long time. So it's coming into its 31st year now. It was created by Ashley Ramsden and then joined by Sue Hollingsworth and Rui and Stella. And, there were many different teachers who came in and out of the school. And throughout the whole time, they had the 3-month storytelling course. So they created many courses, but the one consistent one was always the 3-month course, which has had as at its aim to teach the art and craft of telling stories to adults. And this always happened at Emerson College, and it's always been I could say a mythical course, because the spending time, this precious 3 months with other travelers, with other fellow storytellers, delving into stories is such a magical opportunity. So it's always been a wonderful course. And in 2017, Roy had been co-carrying the course for quite a while. I think it was almost 11 years. And they reached a point, or they reached a point at the school where they felt a need for renewal of the course. And I had been working with Rui on, as I said, with the Earth speakers work for a while. And it was a moment of, I received this invitation, this wonderful invitation to come in and see what's we had also, now that I remember this we had also, Rui and I had done a course, initiated this course called Healing Words, just part of a bigger body of work with the healing capacity of stories. And it was a 3-week course, and it was so wonderful what happened there, that we thought, wow, imagine if we could continue with these people for another 3 months. How wonderful would that be? So we sort of took in to the 3-month course some of the seeds that we had planted in the Healing Words course. And one of the big changes we brought in was that the students were asked to create a project. So as they were learning different craft techniques, as they were going through different story families, and really sort of opening themselves up to the world of storytelling, we also had them thinking about how they might want to apply this work in their lives, in their work, when the course is over. Because many times people come from many walks of life, and how people will use the work and the things that the wonderful gifts that stories give, it varies enormously from one person to the next. So we really wanted people to start thinking about that already as they were going through the course. And that and other elements of that came through from the Healing Words work really took even further what already was a very healing course, because working with stories, the stories themselves are the healers and the teachers anyways. But it took it even further to a place where we really felt people were coming and were really able to take the time to listen to the stories that were emerging from within them. What were the stories that they were called to tell in the world? What were their personal stories that connected with the traditional stories, and that were could only come out from their own mouth? There was no other person in the whole wide world who could tell that unique story, because that's the unique story that each and every person carries, or that they can tell at any given point. So that was me arriving to the School of Storytelling, and it has been such an honor and a pleasure challenge often as well, to guide, to facilitate and to guide this process, because it does go really deep. And it is, I can say from what I have witnessed over the years, can be quite life-changing as well.
I agree. It's very, very life-changing, and it is very deep. It's not. I guess when you're working with story and when you're a storyteller, you cannot be anything other than yourself because the audience will know. And if you have any walls up, which is what my experience was, I had walls up to stop people from seeing me, then people won't hear the story. They won't engage, they won't connect. And so it was very, very deep work that I did. And I thank you again for your contribution to that. So you also have a lot of work that you do in Spain. I'd love to hear about the work that you do around energy and stuff at home.
So, I mean, here I've been mostly working in a kind of voluntary kind of way, in the sense that gathering people, taking people to different landscapes, not in a framework of a course or a specific goal in mind, but rather to develop these capacities. And yeah, I say develop again. It's almost like the remembrance. It's very much based on somatic awareness. So one body, from my body to the greater body in the landscape. And so I've been inviting people to join me. As you know, I came here 15 years ago, and I live by the Strait of Gibraltar, which is a fascinating part of the world. It's so many stories, so many cultures have come through here and settled here and conquered here and there's so many layers of history. And with each layer of each culture that has arrived here, meant different stories, different traditions, many of them sort of taking the previous one, as happens everywhere, taking the previous ones sort of places of worship, let's say, and bringing on their own story on top of that. So every place that you go to, you can really open up to listening to stories, to from this era and this era and this era. And so this is one of the things that I've done here, is invite people to come with me and to be like explorers, researchers, story finders. Sometimes places hold trauma, like we hold trauma in our body, can hold trauma in our body. Sometimes we hold memories that are undigested and need sort of a bit more processing. So it's really very, very similar to how a therapist might work with a person. I like to do that with places and landscapes, and I like to invite people in to do that. So I've done that for all these years that I've been here. Now I'm opening up to do it a bit more in a bit more structured way. So I am offering courses here now, and also not just here, but in different places. So one of the places I like to go to and bring people is in Sicily, is to go and visit Mount Etna, the volcano, which is, yeah, it's wonderful. And it also has so many of the Greek stories are, can be found there in every between every rock and and but so yeah, so I tell some of the stories, and then we do some of this type of work, and together it opens up something magnificent. I do the same in northern Morocco. There's a lot of Sufi stories that I became interested in, and yeah, and I like to take these stories and try to sense if there's any resonance with the place. Like, why did this story evolve here? Why did it come here? Why are the people still holding on to this story? Does it have anything to do with the ecological reality of the place? And often there is, or often we find interesting things to do with the flora or the fauna or the or as I said, the history. So this is one of the things I really enjoy doing, and I hope to be doing more and more of here. Yeah.
Lovely. So tell me more about the working with landscapes. I wrote an article not long ago about how the stories come out of the landscape, and how when you're reading a Scottish story, for example, you know it's a Scottish story because the landscape is jumping off the page for you, but there's nothing explicit in the text that shows you that it's a Scottish story. It feels Scottish. So how do you, I guess, tell me more about the landscape, that you're working with.
Yeah, I recently in November we had here. I organized an artist residency. It was an experiment to see how that would work. It was a month long, and I invited 5 artists to come here. And in the beginning, what we did was we met with different kinds of uh, experts, like maybe I could call them, to tell us about the landscape. So we met with a geologist and a prehistory expert and different types of people. I'm thinking specifically now about the geologist. I want to tell you about the geologist because it was fascinating what he shared with us. It was almost like I felt so grateful to him because it was almost like the first time that I really understood geology. Sometimes reading it from a book, it's kind of a bit of difficult to kind of understand. Well, what came first? Well, how did that develop? And he I guess, yeah, he's a very good storyteller. He told it really well. But what it made me realize was that maybe we can speak about the story of Heracles, the Greek story of Heracles, and the Strait of Gibraltar is known as the one side is, and the other side, the 2 pillars of Heracles. Even the Andalusian flag has the image of Heracles with the 2 pillars and the lion next to him. It's a very alive image. The separating of the continents, that he did. And when Paco, the geologist, was telling us about the process of the creation of how the strait opened up and the waters of the Atlantic came into the Mediterranean like a huge waterfall. The echoes between the geological reality and the story starts to make sense. And I think that happens everywhere. You say, how is a Scottish story? You feel it, that we are animal bodies. We have animal bodies. We know through our animal body how a landscape feels, even if we can't tell it in words. And we'll know something about the climate, about the rock, the minerals that are there, the type of trees that grow or don't grow there. There's so many elements that compose a landscape and that have a very particular feeling to it. And processes, I think many of the stories tell us about processes. They tell us about relationality. They tell us about the kind of relationality that elements have with one another and that we as human beings have with the elements. I mean, it's, with every system is very, very complex. To try to explain in complex systems is, in rational sort of A to B ways, we try, and the way that we can do it is to segment them, right? So science does a wonderful job at segmenting the whole and showing us, though, this bit works like this, and then we can really zoom into that little bit and understand how it works, which is wonderful. And then when we want to zoom back out and look at whole unit and how the elements work with each other and affect each other, it becomes so complex that our mind actually can't fathom it. And that's where stories come in and share something of those relationalities through characters, through events, through actions as well, and yeah, so I think it is very possible to feel different specific landscapes through different specific stories, because there is a part of us that still remembers and can relate.
And you were talking about how people came and brought their stories, and then the stories were piled. They changed, And do you think that the underpinning landscape of the original tale is still underneath all of when you add the new cultural threads and things?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like any investigation work, we need to look at the different layers, and there's a lot that came in with the patriarchal lens that we can sort of peel through or look through. There's a I'll go back to Heracles to give an example. The two of his trials can be located through different historians, I mean Greek historians, can be located along the Strait of Gibraltar. One is on the northern side, so around the area of Cadiz is his trial. It's understood that it's the trial of the cattle of Geryon. On the southern side, around the area of Lixus, which is near modern-day Larache, is the story of the getting the apples of the Hesperides. So these two stories can be tracked, and there is a place that is it's a stone circle that's called Mazora. It's in Morocco, not very far from Lixus, from the ancient city of Lixus, where the garden of the Hesperides is known to be. And in the stone circle, there is a legend. It's an Amazigh legend. Amazigh, known as the Berber people. And it is about the giant Ante. Now, Ante in the Greek mythology is known as the giant Anteos. And there is a story of how in the Great War of the Giants, Heracles overcame the giant Ante and killed him. I mean, it's a big long story, and I'll just say one thing about it, which is that Heracles managed to kill Anteos because Athena told him the secret to being able to kill him, and that is that because Anteos was the son of Gaia, and of Poseidon, and she said, if you manage to lift him off the ground, then you'll be able to kill him, because he receives his power from his mother. And where no one else had, any passerby to the area had always been killed by Anteos, because he was so mighty and so strong. But Heracles knew that secret, and he did lift him off the ground and kill him. It's really interesting to me that both in the Amazigh tradition this story exists, and in the Hellenic Greek tradition this story exists. And apart from, I also see it completely as geological, like huge spans of geological processes, and the incoming more civilized human being. But apart from that, I can also look at it as the Greek culture, civilization coming in and taking over, and bringing in terms of thoughts, ideas, ways of being, taking over from the more indigenous, connected to the ground, to the earth culture that time. So they both, this story exists in the two civilizations. They're told a little bit differently, and I guess that the point of view is a little bit different. So yeah, whether we could strip that and see what was underneath it, I guess the conclusions are always subjective, aren't they? You know, because there isn't an objective way of like saying, well, this was the version that came before meant this, and the version that came before meant that. So this story for me offers the kind of window to look at these stories from a decolonial lens, because it does speak of the Hellenic colonization of the area. And yeah, there's something about all stories, all, you know, you spoke about how do we go back, you know, I think all stories became more and more rigid in a way, or became more and more closed to the polyphony and to the polyphony of life systems in a way, you know, and more of the civilized mind came to dominate these stories. So I think they do offer us this possibility to peel off layers. And I think as we peel off layers in our own minds and our own ways of thinking and doing things, then we might suddenly have a sort of aha moments about stories. Wait a minute, maybe that means that.
Oh, that was a absolutely great exploration into landscape. I really, really appreciate it. This podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. What is at the heart of storytelling for you?
I'm gonna say something that, yeah, maybe is no, probably it's not unusual. For me, the heart of storytelling is listening, actually. I feel like to be a great storyteller, you also need to be a great listener. I feel like stories emerge, stories are there, stories are always there. And to pick them up, we need to really know how to listen. And yeah, listening is also an art form, to listen well, to listen in a way that allows, really allows what's there to come to the surface. I think is at the heart of storytelling for me.
Oh, that's a beautiful answer. I love that. And so, why do you think we need the oral tradition today?
I feel the oral tradition is a technology. It's an ancient technology, but a super ancient and completely contemporary, because it's rooted in the physical body. It's rooted in our voice, in our gestures, in our gaze, as I said before. It's rooted in the encounter between bodies, you know, human beings in embodied human being, and I feel like we need to keep this technology going alongside, you know, the technology of writing, of written word, and now of digital storytelling, which all have their own merits for sure. But if we don't keep it as well, the oral tradition, we are really going to miss a lot of the nuance that allows complexity to exist, to for us to be part of the polyphony of life, the complexity of relationships, relationalities, the ambiguity, you know, things are not one or the other. Things in life are and both, and they're often paradoxical, and often things don't make sense, and in their not making sense lies their beauty. And I think the oral tradition allows for all that, you know, there's breath in that, and there for through the body, through the embodied experience, through the sharing of time together in person, through the warmth that can come through the voice and open doors through the soul qualities that are allowed to live. All of this, exists in the oral tradition, and therefore it's a super important technology for us to keep developing, keep keep doing and living.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I think it's really important too. Could we go back to you talk about somatic, you mentioned it really briefly, but can you just talk a little bit about the somatic work?
Yes. I feel like, yeah, it's great that you pick up on it, because I do feel like the somatic work is at the heart of, yeah, maybe what I bring to the storytelling work. I feel like we we live in our body, and our body is a wonderful ally and a wonderful way of knowing the world, of communicating with the world, of knowing the world. And unfortunately, the way that we are raised, the way that we are the way that modernity kind of, it requires us to ignore and override so much of what the body is telling us. So I think as a young child, we are often sort of told to override. This is part of our education. Sit for hours in a chair, and it doesn't matter if you what your body is telling you. Just sit there and use your head more. So we do develop our mind's capacities in a way that often overrides our body's needs and messages. We get so many messages all the time through our body, and we are not so well practiced in our culture to first of all to even pay attention to it, then to interpret it, and then to act on it. It's like basic, it would sound like, but it isn't. And so I feel like, yeah, in general, our era needs to re-educate itself and to find new ways to be attentive and respectful and mindful of our bodies. So this somatic perceptions are this is something that I really I bring a lot of my attention to. And also when I work with people, like, okay, so what's there? Even with images, this works really, really strongly with images that we, as storytellers, we work with. This is our prima materia, images. But each image also lives somewhere in our body. It evokes a whole range of sensations and information, really. So when I say, when I say, okay, the Heracles went to get the apples, the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides. Even if we stopped there and just stayed with that image for a while and really went into a somatic listening, and what does that, where is that, how is that, really go into that, it would bring up a wealth of gnosis, from the body that, yeah, that we're probably missing, that we probably could use, that it would probably teach us something, or heal us in a certain kind of ways. It would give us a gift for sure. So this, yeah, the body, the knowing body, the images, and that how they flow into one to another, that for me is also, if we said at the heart of storytelling, that also feels like at the heart of storytelling. And certainly something that we can expand our knowledge on. Or it's a practice. It's like going to the gym and working out. We do need to do this workout with somatic knowledge, somatic attention.
Well, it's listening, isn't it? It's listening to the body, listening to the land, listening to, all of the things that you've talked about. It captures all of that. I'm interested in how you work with story with that, you said, like when you said about the apple tree, I was like, I saw myself climbing the tree. So what, so do you then talk about that with people? Like, do you discuss it in groups, and how do you work with that?
Hmm. I like to, as you know, and during the course I spoke about it a little bit. I like to tell a story and pause it in certain moments and go into the somatic experience of that moment. So because I do, for me, telling stories is certainly like something that I like to do in the context of healing work and of reparative and healing work. So I like to work with a group and tell one story, but tell it over quite a long time and pause in certain moments and take us into an experience. So it can be. I mean, recently, a few months ago, I was telling a story about mermaids and underwater beings, and so we paused and we all went down together with the mermaid. So we all went underwater. And so first, of course, through the imagination, it's the imagination, and then the breath joins in, and then the intention. So I'm going there. This is also the basic tools of shamanic work is that it's imagination and intention and going somewhere. And then once you enter, you're there, and you're in a kind of an altered state of consciousness where you can do things, you can go certain places, you can decide to be active in that other world, in another place, in another world. So we went down to the underground water, and then I did an exercise in pairs where one person, it's a very kind of basic exercise where one person has their eyes closed and follows another through the other person's sound. But we were doing all of that in the imagination that we are now under the water. And it was so special for people. They had gone with the mermaid under the sea, inside of the sea, and they were following the sound of the mermaid, in the room. And so, this is, on the one hand, this is like child's play. And yes, it is child's play, which opens us up to being in the body right now. All I'm experiencing is a sound that I'm following, and through my imagination I'm also in another world. And yeah, all these things, as simple as they are, they give us, they take us, they release things from our, they open new possibilities for us, and it's all in the body. This is all work in the body. And so the stories are real sort of, they're like invitations. The images in the story are like invitations to inner landscapes, inner outer landscapes. I love this movement between inner and outer landscapes. What really is in and what really is out? Is it, or is it an ongoing movement of relationality?
I imagine you've had some wonderful experiences in your time working with people and mentoring people and stuff. Have you got any really great examples that you would like to share?
Oh, I don't know. Let me see what comes up. I mean, first of all, I feel, just to start, I just feel like saying I am so grateful. I am so grateful to be able to work with people in this capacity. I feel like um I always see the immense beauty of each person through this. You sort of, it's like diving into a whole universe, a whole yeah, I was gonna say world, but then it was like, no, world is too small, as a universe of the people, and everybody is so unique and special and beautiful. And so I feel very honored to have this opportunity. Do I have any specific story? Yeah, nothing really comes to my mind right
No, that's okay. That's okay.
So
More
have you
blank,
got any
sorry.
advice for people who might want to work in deep ecology or working in somatic ways or healing ways, or anything else that you've got experience in that you might like to share?
I would say trusting in the little voices that you have inside, trusting those small intuitions that, oh, I'm going to turn to the left here rather than continue straight, or these things that maybe don't make sense, and you don't know why, but if this they're often so easy to miss, the little voices. And I think that's also the work of the beauty of mentoring someone, for example, is being able to listen to something that they might themselves not be hearing at that moment. Even it's those very, very tiny little voices, and picking up on and going, hey, wait, I caught this, what about this? And so, yeah, for anyone who is interested in working with this or is already working with this, I feel like these are muscles that as humanity at this time we need to get really, really good at. So keep going, keep practicing, keep listening, and definitely follow what the small birds chirp and say, and advice, the advice from the little people.
That's wonderful advice. So thank you. It's been wonderful to chat with you and get to know you a bit more about the work that you do outside Storytelling Beyond Words. How can people find you if they want to find out about you and the work that you do?
I have a website, and it's called Earth Speaks. It's earth-speaks.net. I'm on social media, mostly on Instagram, and through the school as well, the School of Storytelling at Emerson College. We can highly recommend also coming to this wonderful experience of the 3 months, or meet me on top of the Etna, or in Morocco, in Greece. We might be next year. Yeah, just get in touch. You can leave my contact details and get in touch. I'm always happy to. I also do one-on-one work with mentoring or healing sessions. So yeah, always happy to meet new people and listen to what stories want to emerge. Dying to be born.
Well, thank you, Karmit, so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate everything, and I'm really looking forward to listening to the replay when I edit. So I'm really, really excited to hear it back. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Alyssa, and thank you so much for what you're doing with this podcast. It's just so wonderful to have this place where you can hear so many storytellers tell about their work, because each one is completely different world, and just different avenues how to get into storytelling and how to develop this work. So
it really is a gift to speak to people, and I feel inspired after every interview, and filled with hope with how much work people do in the world. It's just, and the way they do it is just so beautiful, really, really beautiful. So thank you so much for your time.
thank you, Alyssa.
If you've enjoyed the podcast and would like to support me to continue the work that I'm doing, please head to buymeacoffee.com/Alyssa Curtain and make a donation or sign up for a subscription. This is a passion project, and as such, it is voluntary. So your donations make it easier for me to continue this work. Thank you for your support. Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling, and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.